Good afternoon-ish, almost ready for lunch. So last year I stood up here, I actually think in this exact same room, but I could be wrong on that. My title was VP of Product Management, which you may not think is relevant, but actually the whole reason I'm here today is to tell the story essentially of why now my title is VP of Product Development. That's really why I'm here today. And as we all know, Gene and this whole community is very into and very much appreciates these experience reports. So, my formal title of this story is an experience report transitioning from project to product. That's the official title. The actual title that I submitted was, oh my, does moving to product value streams really involve all of that? But I guess that wasn't formal enough, so we went with the formal title. I'm going to attempt to go through some things, and hopefully y'all will take away some tips and tricks and things to take back to your organizations. But I think from my perspective, one of the most important things that I've used in the last year is simply the phrase, oh my. Oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my, oh my. Oh my. I think it evokes empathy and thoughtfulness without judgment, which is an important part of going through this journey. I did, in fact, actually, at one point this deck had, every time I had an oh my moment, I put a slide in that said oh my, but then the whole deck was just oh my, so I removed that. So if you take away nothing else, go back to your organization with some oh my's in your back pocket. I do have to give one more disclaimer, because Tasktop, many of y'all work at massively huge organizations. Tasktop is not massively huge, but I really do believe that much of the experience that we've gone through is relevant, and in fact, because we are small enough whereby someone like myself can see into finance and HR and all the departments easier, I think there's some takeaways and some things that can absolutely be applied to large-scale organizations. Also, all of our customers are very large-scale organizations, so don't discount what I'm going to be going through just because we're smaller than most of the companies y'all work for. So I think nobody really would question there's a movement afoot, right? How many of you are working in organizations that are trying to move from project to product? Right, and even last year that number was much lower, so there's clearly a movement afoot. Here's one of many statistics, 55% are trying to move from project to product. So is that why Tasktop went on our journey to be part of this movement? Well, the truth of the matter is that the answer to that question is actually no. The real reason we went on this journey is simply because we were flummoxed. We were absolutely flummoxed. And I can actually walk off the stage now and go off into my life because I've always wanted to use the word flummoxed in a talk. I now have used that word, so I guess I'm done. I love that word, flummoxed. It's a great word. But we were honestly flummoxed. Why? We're a product company. I'm not a bank, not retail. We're a product company. So aren't I operating in a product-centric way? Well, we had issues. And interestingly, you've heard Mick and Carmen and others talk about the core areas you need to look at in order to ensure that you're moving more to product thinking. You look at all of these areas. And if you looked surface level, we were doing great. We ticked all the boxes. It was fine. But as I said before, we had issues. So let's talk a little bit about what these symptoms were. First, we had a bit of an us versus them issue between product and engineering. I'm sure that's never happened in any of your organizations, an us versus them, but we had a bit of that, too much of that. Problems had to go too high up to get resolved. They often had to go all the way to the CEO to get resolved. This one is probably the most important one. There was a lack of knowledge about and empathy for our customers, something we pride ourselves in. And all of a sudden, we were not feeling that we had that empathy and knowledge about customers. We were feeling more inward focused than outward focused. That's, as soon as you feel more inward focused, pack it up and go home. You got to make some significant changes. And we were beginning to feel more inward focused rather than outward focused. And then we were really questioning, were we truly product focused throughout our entire organization? Finance, HR, biz dev, throughout the entire organization. And last, but definitely not least, investment decisions were twice baked. How many of y'all are from the South in the United States? Probably not many, but twice baked potatoes are like the best thing in the world. Get your mom to cook you some. But you don't want to you want to eat twice baked potatoes. You do not want your investment decisions to be twice baked. Essentially, you had to make the decision. We would make an investment decision, and then would have to resell the investment decision to the engineering organization. And that didn't feel good. So these were kind of the symptoms that we were feeling. But again, surface level, we ticked all the boxes. And we were in this very significant time of reflection. Mick's book was about to be coming out, all about moving from project to product. So it was kind of a good time. We were self-reflecting. We were really focusing on these issues. And what we realized is that mindset is everything. So we ticked all the boxes. But context and structure, the context within which you work, makes an absolute difference. And the further you feel from your customer, be it an internal customer. How many of y'all work on projects and products that are for internal customer usage? Right, but you have customers, and they matter, and you should be as close to them as you possibly can. Oftentimes people think when I talk about this, we're only talking about external, companies like mine that sell external software. Not the case. It is absolutely the same for internal customers. So this mindset is everything. And we really began to see that product thinking is really only there for the purpose of customer first. So what did we do? What we did is we went back and we looked at those same core areas through the lens of a customer, of our customers. And when we did that, we discovered something very interesting. And that effectively was that the way we were thinking of teams, which, by the way we were structured is very common in software companies, the way we were structured. We weren't doing anything crazy or, it was very common. But it wasn't customer first. So this is it's scaled down, but this is the structure that we had originally. You had a VP of product, that's what I talked about last year, and we had a VP of engineering. But what does that do? And by the way, Mick, our CEO, is sitting in this room. Mick, I didn't blur you out because you aren't important. That's kind of not good for your career path. But the view of team was this. If you asked anyone in our organization, what team are you on? They would have either said product or engineering. And that then permeated all the way through. So what's the issues? What are some of the issues with that? It creates this product versus engineering attitude. All difficult decisions, even though he's blurred out, kind of have to go quite high up for resolution. And probably most importantly, this was an internal view of team. We were organized from an internal perspective, not the customer view of team. So the customer view of team is this. This is how a customer sees the work that we do. So the values of product thinking, as I said before, are, embody this notion of customer first. Why weren't we thinking and organizing from that perspective? And so what we did is, in fact, move from this structure to this structure. And that's why now I have a different title. And now we are structured all around the concept of product value streams. And all the teams are smushed into one. That's a super technical phrase. Smush your teams into one. And so now what that has resulted in is the concept of team and the we matches how our customers see us. Decisions are pushed down. In fact, almost all our decisions are made directly within a product value stream or between product value streams. This is not to say that dependencies don't still matter, and I'm going to talk more about that in a bit as well. So, as with all things in life, things are always more complicated than you think. So I'm going to go through two things. What happened, and then what happened because of what happened. And probably the because of what happened part is the more compelling part. So what happened? Fact-based, there was a new role introduced called product value stream lead, brand new role introduced. And we moved from a product team and an engineering team to a single product development team with 4 product value streams, 2 internal-facing product value streams and 2 external-facing product value streams. Each one of these teams, each one of these product value streams had a top-level default structure where there's a product value stream lead, an engineering manager, and a product manager. Now, if you go onto Google and you Google product value stream lead, you get nothing, zilcho, absolutely nothing. And so we knew we were kind of on our own to figure out what this really meant. And then the other thing is, you notice that I said there was also a product manager. So you have a product value stream lead and a product manager. And yes, you do need both. And no, neither of them are project managers. Super important takeaway. And so the first thing we did is actually spend quite a bit of time making sure it was extremely clear what the distinction was between a product value stream lead and a product manager. So this truly is our definition of a product value stream lead. Don't worry, I'm not going to read this entire thing for y'all. I just want to highlight a couple points. Note that in the core definition of a product value stream lead, it says responsible for all aspects of their product value stream, both business, vision, design, customer happiness, cost, pricing, market changes, operational and technical, agile teams, estimation, and architecture. So you have a very holistic view of your product value stream. And one of the most important things that that person does is actually determines the flow item distribution, because they are the only ones that have the true biggest, largest context of what's going on in their product value stream. And they're responsible to set objectives, results, and measure success. You've heard a lot of people talk about the importance of measuring. I cannot say enough times that if you're not measuring as part of doing this, you're not going to succeed. So measuring is absolutely extremely important. So now the product manager. What is the product manager? His or her main goal is responsibility for prioritization of all the flow items by deeply understanding all stakeholder needs, customer, field, analysts, and technical trade-offs to ensure efficient delivery of these prioritized items. So they're responsible for prioritization. They're responsible for the feature design of an entire product. And they oftentimes will take on the additional role of product owner. But depending on size and scope, that's not always the case. So just to summarize, because I know there were a lot of words up there, summarize the difference between a product value stream lead and a product manager. Product value stream lead, whole picture, business, operational, technical. Product manager, prioritization, 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 prioritization. And anybody that thinks that you can have a product manager that also does the role of PVS lead, you're mistaken. It is too much. The act of really knowing how to prioritize and knowing your customer is a full-time gig. Product value stream lead, significant people management duties. Product manager, generally no people management duties. Now, people skills, off the charts, but in terms of people management skills, much less. The leads generally don't do any of the feature design, but the product managers spend a tremendous amount of their time doing feature design. And then in terms of, people always like it when the metrics go up, I guess. That was kind of intimidating. The primary metrics that are used for the lead, it's more about flow distribution, as I mentioned earlier. It's actually in the definition of their job, and flow efficiency. For the product manager, it's about flow time, flow load, and flow velocity. Now, in no way do I want y'all to leave saying, okay, I'm a product manager, I only pay attention to these 3 things. They get used by both, but just in terms of like where your focus area is, these are the differences between them. So I just thought it's always nice when there's real stories from real people. So we've got 2 of our product value stream leads, and one thing that's interesting is one of them up there is actually a former engineering manager. The other one is actually a former product manager. So just to show, doesn't matter which backgrounds you come from, you can mix and match. However, I'm going to be going through in a moment what makes a good product value stream lead, and so you have to be looking for these qualities. Lucas on the left, the product value stream lead role creates team agency, combining PM design and technical execution. It has very little to do with being a PM, meaning he means in that case product manager. Jeff over on the right, I think his take is very interesting. It requires him to speak in terms of business results. Notice that he has something interesting in here about he's unenamored with technology, which in many ways is quite good, to be unenamored with technology. And the second point that he makes, I think, is extremely important. It forces me to delegate the role of technical lead to someone on the team. This should serve to empower the team to do what they think is best. I think it's just interesting to get different viewpoints from people in the same role. So what makes a good product value stream lead? First and foremost, they have to be business-minded. They don't have to be technically on the business side, but they do need to be business-minded. They also absolutely critical to have vision. You heard Jean talking earlier about the importance of vision. This role really requires significant vision. They have to be empathetic. So actually you're managing a lot of different personality types because you're dealing with the fact that you're dealing with your customers and analysts, et cetera, as well as your engineers. The personality traits in common between an analyst and an engineer, generally speaking, are pretty much 0. So you have to be able to, I love them both, you have to be able to show empathy and have empathy for all the parts involved. I already talked about this. Being a good people manager is critical. It's absolutely critical in this role. Again, not so much for the product manager role. And you have to be multilingual. And by multilingual, what I mean is that you have to be able to speak. My husband always says that after 20 years of marriage, he knows how to speak wife. That's what he calls it. I speak wife. I don't think I've learned to speak husband. I'm not sure I even want to be frank. But you have to be able to speak analyst, speak customer, speak executive, talk earlier about how to speak to the board. You have to be able to speak like that, speak to engineers who are going to come and talk to you about all kinds of technical details. So multilingual. And this last one I put up specifically because I think our COO is also in the room, and he always tells me that he doesn't care about how the sausage is made. But this role, you need to care about how the sausage is made. Now you might think to yourself, hold on a second. Business-minded and caring about how the sausage is made? Is that possible? It is, but it's tricky to find, and you really need to make sure that you're communicating to your leads that you absolutely need to care about both. Because if you don't care about both, you're not going to succeed in actually paying attention to the whole. So a couple other considerations. Don't be blind. Specific individuals matter. And this is much harder. I will say this is much harder in a large-scale organization. You need to actually say, is John going to be good as a product value stream lead? John, not just a generic person. Context and background matters. So for us, of our 4 product value streams, 2 of them are run by people with engineering backgrounds, 2 with product backgrounds. And that actually makes a difference. Another consideration, where do you put cross-cutting or adjacent roles? That could be a whole talk in and of itself. I don't have time to go through that. And then you need to make sure that you allow teams to have flexibility within their product value streams. As an example, one of our product value streams has determined they want the title and role of team lead. Others have decided they don't want that in a different product value stream. So don't dictate too much. Just say you're the product value stream lead, figure out what's going to work within your product value stream. Now, a couple things that I think are very important. It's more important to be intentional than it is to be perfect. So I can guarantee you that in organizations, especially of y'all's size, the first thing you're gonna walk out is like, okay, well, how would I structure, which parts would go where? Where does this framework go? How does this work? Be intentional, but don't be perfect about it, because it's basically possible, and you can slice and dice things in a number of ways, usually with some decent success. So intentionality versus perfection. So interesting enough, y'all know the game Simon Says, but our CFO is also named Simon. So I was going to say that Simon says, but actually the more important, don't tell Simon I said this, but the more important person in our organization around this is actually Carmen. For those of you that know Carmen. Carmen says that you need to treat your delivery pipeline as a product. So one of our product value streams is in fact our delivery pipeline, and that's super important to do. The other thing, and this gets into the whole notion of intentional versus perfect. If you look at this picture long enough, it does kind of freak you out. But what you need to do is, the best way to be intentional is look at your entire organization through the lens of how your customer sees you, not how you're seeing them. That's the most important thing. If you take nothing else away besides oh my, take away the fact that think about your structure from how your customer would see you, internal or external. There's always the hot potato of what do I do with my internal or shared services frameworks components. Super hard to deal with. Treat them as products too. That could be also a whole nother talk about how to do that. But fundamentally, what we do is we actually have our internal shared services as a product value stream that then, for some measurement and things, gets lumped in with one of the other product value streams. Dependencies will exist. Relish them rather than shirk them. Please. It's impossible to think of any organization of any size that you can do things with no dependencies between things. Yes, you should try and reduce them. Of course you should try and do that. But relish them and figure out how to work within them rather than shirking them. Okay, so that's the what happened. Now, what happened because of what happened? So there's a famous quote. I have no idea who said it, but I think it's famous. People don't resist change. They resist loss. If there's the one thing that I regret having not done as part of this, I learned about this later, this concept of loss maps. Have anyone ever heard of these loss maps? When you're going to do a big change like this, you go in. I feel better that y'all didn't know about them either. You go in and you sit down and you go through each constituency and you write down what you perceive, and it's best to ask them, what they think they're going to lose. Because they're not resisting the change, they're resisting loss. So what was our loss map? So for engineers, because again, think about combining two teams into one, there was a concern of losing culture, a lost culture. Where would my engineering culture go? What would happen? I wouldn't be managed by an engineer anymore. What would that even look like? And this one I find somewhat interesting. They were quite worried that they would no longer be insulated. And we were saying, we don't really want you to be insulated. So that was quite interesting. On the product side, what was interesting is that they had this fear of being swallowed up because, of course, there's far more engineers than there are product people, and they thought they would just kind of get lost in the shuffle. And they were worried about all of a sudden being responsible for all kinds of technical details. And they just felt that they didn't have a sense of wait, there's one more. Don't click yet. They didn't quite feel like they had, they were worried that there was not going to be then clarity around the role of product and product managers, which gets to the last point, which is fundamentally there was career path confusion. To be a PVS lead, what does it mean to have an engineering track? So we spent a tremendous amount of time going through and essentially reworking, redoing our career paths, our career ladders. And this is not a joke, this really is what it is, to make sure that every single part of the organization around this felt that they had a path and that their discipline was recognized. So I highly encourage paying attention to that as part of this. So Jean wanted to make sure that I spoke about one topic in particular, which is who leads this. I came from the product side, and absolutely, it makes a difference if the person that leads this combined product development group comes from a product side or an engineering side. First off, I don't know what it would be like if it was the engineering side because I came from the product side, but I have a feeling it can work either way, but there will be differences. And so I just put here that the resulting optics and tone will be different. As a product person, I kind of more naturally focus on customer first and not as much on some of the technical details. But what you have to do, what I've been learning to do, and I would argue I'm not that great at it yet, is to overcompensate by paying more attention. I find myself slacking our QA people quite frequently because I want them to know that I really care about their act of the work that they're doing. So kind of overcompensate then on the side, on the aspects that really you would think of a more traditional engineering background. As I said before, ensure that you've got career tracks. And the last thing is whoever leads needs to be able to communicate really effectively with the executives. You can ask Mick and Neelan if I do that yet or not, but that's a really important part of the job, is being able to kind of take all of the information that you've got coming from the technical side and the non-technical side and summarize it for the executives. So, does the story end here? I wish the story ended here. And I did have to put in one oh my, because I couldn't go through the whole thing. But oh my, it does not in fact end here. Again, this could be a whole nother talk, so I'm going to race through this pretty quickly. But just to give you an example in terms of other parts of the organization and how they felt, finance said, you want me to give you budget and revenue numbers based on what? Sales, why are you talking to me about these technical debt thingies? The execs, am I going to get consistent reporting and visibility across all of my products? Just to give you a sense, and I actually did spend time when preparing this talk, and I went and interviewed people and asked them questions. So all of the stuff that I'm going through is coming from the real people that were involved. This one I find most fascinating, the world of finance. So do you like this? I'm going to explain to you the world of finance from someone who has no clue about the world of finance. But best I could understand from Paul's summary, his world is dictated by investors and laws. He wrote a beautifully written paragraph about this. But fundamentally, he needs to have consistent comparison because investors want to be able to compare not just within your organization, but across organizations. Tricky because product value streams are inherently unique for each organization. So that's issue number one. Paul's world is driven by traditional reporting and systems. Obviously, accounting and financial management has been around a lot longer than software development. But product value streams require reporting in a completely different way. And he reiterated to me about 15,000 times, laws are laws. Laws are laws. Laws are laws. And they are not flexible. They are, in fact, laws. But on the product value stream side, it's all about flexibility. We wanted to be able to move people around between product value streams as necessary, et cetera. So you can see there's quite a dichotomy between these. And what is the end result? I asked him specifically. He has to do proxy reporting now that takes double the time and double the work at the moment, because he has to keep reporting the way we need to be reporting to our investors and for the laws. And then he has to create separate reporting for us to be able to report across all the product value streams. So the last piece of this, do I have enough time for the last piece? Conversation changers is super important. I'm from Texas, so I can talk really quickly. Conversation changers, what you want to do is you want to be able to talk differently. And what you do, we change the way we do all of our release planning, and we speak only in terms of flow items, flow metrics. So this is an example of how we changed how we present each quarter to our executives. Notice it says benefits for customers and benefits for Tasktop on each one, and does in fact include features, debt, defects, and risks. You always need to be talking about all four of them, always. This is an example also from the same release planning that we talk at the executive level about flow distribution, super important. And then getting to the executive perspective on being able to report and have consistent visibility. This is the dashboard that we use that consistently allows us to talk about the metrics that we use to measure across the board: flow velocity, flow distribution, flow load, flow time, and flow efficiency. Pitfalls. Change management is always the hardest part. I guarantee that. That's not going to be a surprise. Tricky balance if something is imposed upon versus driven by. We recognize that the entire organization won't operate this way instantly. As noted, finance, we have a long ways to go. And last but not least, PVS is a terrible acronym. People hate it. It's awful. PVSL, yeah, it's terrible. It's hard to make it plural, et cetera. What were our victories? Absolutely, overall, we have much more of a customer focus, and that at the core is what product thinking is all about. Much less of an us versus them, more of a we. Investment decisions are easier to implement, and there is consistency of reporting. I have 1 second left. And this is where I was just talking about what's next and questions, things we haven't succeeded in. Lots of things. Our journey, by the way, is about a year in, so we have a long ways to go. So I think I have to go. But I appreciate your time, and I'm happy to stay after and answer any questions. So thanks, y'all.